Warm greetings to you, Professor Vijoy S Sahay, sir. It's a great privilege for me to take interview from you, and it's a great honor. Thank you for your valuable time, even though you are so busy with writing a book and about to close your book. So it's amazing. And would you please tell me something about the book, at what stage and what are you writing now? And it will be of great interest for us. And thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'll surely tell you. Actually, the seeds of writing a book on anthropological theory were sown in my mind as early as in 1981. Because I was a student, Professor Vidya taught us anthropological theory. And I have told you earlier in my interview that he was a very good teacher. And I got interested in anthropological theory in his classes. Thereafter, also, I continued my interest. And when I was given the classes to take up the MA course in anthropology in Ranchi University, I opted for anthropological theory. In those days, in 1981, Professor Vidyarthi had become very busy. So he was taking minimum number of classes. There was one professor, Professor Maken Jha, who is no more today. The anthropology students might be knowing his name. He was teaching the anthropological theory, and I was told to share classes with him by Professor Vidyarthi. I went to him, to Professor Maken Jha. I asked him, sir, I've been told, yeah, Professor Vidyarthi has also told me that you will be sharing. So what topics you want to share? I told him I want to share the toughest topics. Then he smiled. What do you think? What are the toughest? I said Claude Lévi-Strauss, Malinowski, Radcliffe Brown, and all these things. And that's how it started. And in those days, for one class, I used to read for 6-7 hours. So that my aim was to convince the students everything that I knew. And for that, I labored hard. And this went on developing interest in anthropological theory. But in 1981, it so happened. So many people were telling me in those days, my students, that, sir, why don't you write a book? Because they must have felt good. So they always told me. But I have also earlier told you in my interview, if I remember, that I was averse to writing textbooks. I was interested in writing research and reference books. So I didn't attempt. But one day I read a book by J.J. Honigman, The Development of Anthropological Ideas. And you'll be surprised to know that I had the photocopy of a book which I lost, and I gave the order, and today or tomorrow that will be arriving, as I have been told by the courier service. Because that book, the very first pages, a lot of things have been written, but one thing I still, if I remember, I can quote, that Western anthropology owes to Greece and Rome for initial anthropological ideas, but more fertile and more prosperous civilizations have existed in India and China, more so in India. And Honigman hoped that if the ancient scriptures of India are, if the ancient scriptures of India are properly examined by anthropologists, we can have new anthropological life. This inspired me. And I alone started making how to write a book on anthropological theory. And one day, suddenly, Professor Vidyarthi entered my room. He saw me engaged in writing something. Then I saw him, I just stood up. Sir, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to write a book on anthropological theory. And I told him about Honigman's observations. He was very glad. He told me to come down in his chamber. I went there. And he said, yes. He suggested that incorporate the ideas of Indian thinkers also. And he gave me a lot of references. And he told me to come to his library in his home to get some books. And it was his suggestion that the book will be published by dual name, Professor L.P. Vidyarthi and Vijay S Sahay. I was happy, very happy. Unfortunately, Professor Vidyarthi died. So I also left it. Then when I went to Allahabad, there the students were very competitive. They were all interested in civil services, and anthropology had become a very popular subject. So they also insisted me when they attended my classes of anthropological theory. They said, so why not you write a book? But then again, I was not interested. But after the completion of my book, Experiencing Anthropology in the Nicobar Archipelago, I thought that why not I write a book? So it started. And now it is coming to the fag end. It has already come. This is how I. Now, when I started, I also wanted exclusively the Western anthropological thoughts. I will not include anything in this about the India. I'll just give hints of it. I'll just give hints of it. That if the ancient scriptures of India are properly examined, it may throw some. By quoting Honigman, I'll explain it. But I will not add here. I will not add here. That I will be writing exclusively anthropological elements in the ancient scriptures of India, or ancient title, I don't know. But I'll be writing a book incorporating the message, anthropological elements in the message of the ancient scriptures, as well as particularly the Buddha, I have told you, particularly, because I know Buddha's messages are absolutely not mythological. They are as scientific as H2O is equal to water. I have attended some courses of meditation. I was in London, and there I was spending my holidays there. And my host was also my student there in London. So I said, no business. I read the book. I came to India, attended a course of meditation, and then I thought that I must write on it. And I have mentioned in the article which I have sent to you, if you go, you'll find about Buddha also. Now, the thing is that, uh, am I audible and visible both? Hello? I know that recording is going on, perhaps last time you told me, but I'm stopping for a moment and waiting for your response. Hello? Hello. Should I continue or I should wait?
Sorry, my internet got disconnected.
Okay.
Because the Wi-Fi.
Okay. No problem. When you get connected, I'll see you and then I'll further continue. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Please continue, sir.
Yeah. So I would only like to say about this book, which I have been completing now, that it will prove to be a very useful book for the students as well as teachers also. I've taken care of it. This you can call this book as a text come reference book also, because
Wow.
references are exhaustive, you know. I've quoted also any author, but not more than a few lines with all the page numbers and everything. But I've explained their ideas absolutely in my own words. And my words are very simple, because I believe the simplest, the best. So in terms of language also, language should be such that it should be understandable to all who read. So I've tried my level best, because I told you that I'm not a public school product, no. So I've tried my level best to be very simple in language, so that even the most abstract problems that of Claude Lévi-Strauss structuralism, be it Claude Lévi-Strauss, structuralism or historical materialism or dialectical materialism or even cultural, all these things, are very simply described. So I'm sure, because I've seen at least those who have written, I mean, Indian scholars, those who have written some books on anthropological theory, um, least said the better. I don't want to pass any comment. I will avoid my comment even in my book, because plagiarism is one of the very worst things. But I don't know why people do not hesitate to plagiarize from any book, page after page and everything, and without giving even the name in the bibliography of the author. I can give you the example. I know some of the Indian scholars, they have written books, and they are very popular because there is no other book available. And as far as the original texts of the English, the American writers, think very to it, so that is the problem. But this will be a useful book. I'm pretty sure of it. It will take at least 1.5 hours, because what is left now, cultural materialism will be completed today. Then I'll shift to postmodernism. And one thing which initially I left in my book, 2 chapters, not very long, I will, because I found none of the Indian, the right Greek and the Roman philosophers. I know why. In many of the university courses of anthropological theory, they do not mention about the ideas of the Greek and the Roman philosophers. I thought, and I'm going to include. By September, the book will be finished. It will take 1 month at least revision of every comma, full stop, sparing, and everything. Then I'll give it to the press for publication, and again start for the next book. So this is how I have planned. If you want to ask anything more about the book, I can tell you. Any particular topic you ask me, I can tell you. Your voice is not audible.
Sir, how do you see these materialistic theories useful for understanding the social relations and the culture?
Yes, it is very important, really important. And I have written also that Marx's historical materialism is the only scientific theory in social science, rather the best scientific theory in social science. But Marx was neglected. He was ignored by the Western anthropology for more than 7 or 8 decades because of dialectical materialism, because of dialectics. And dialectics was not added by Marx. As a matter of fact, it was added by Engels and published in the name of both Marx and Engels. Dialectical materialism and historical materialism, some people think they are synonymous. They are not wrong, but they are not right also. Because the moment you add dialectics, because Marx talked about what are the material conditions determine the evolution of society and cultures. It is only the material condition that determines the course of society and culture, and that has determined ever since man's evolution on earth, that has determined the course of history of human evolution. That is what he says. And what does he say? Simply, first thing, infrastructure is the cause of structure and superstructure. What includes in infrastructure? Mode of production. Includes mode of production. Mode of production simply means technology. And in technology also the main thing is subsistence technology, how people procure food, how do they live, how they eke out their living. This is what he says, mode of production in subsistence technology. He further also says that as soon as slavery came, because Marx, if you see the history of social evolution, he says the first condition was that of primitive communism. Then came slavery. Then came feudalism. Then came capitalism. Then came socialism. And future will be communism. Communism, will be a stateless society. And that is, I also think that it is a utopia of Marx. It is a utopia of Marx. But two things are there in the infrastructure. One is subsistence technology, that is mode of production. Another is relation of production. This is important to understand. That is simply technology, who owns the technology. Because when the primitive communism was there, this technology was very, very simple hunting gathering technology. That was. So people did not have any extra or any surplus production. It started with the feudalism when entered into the history of human progress. He says human progress, doesn't say human evolution. But, or we can say cultural evolution. He says human progress. Now, he says that when agriculture started, then there was a food security was there, not just every day going and hunting, every day going and hunting. Then somebody was there, somebody had to be there to work in the fields. Of course, it started with horticulture. It was not intensive agriculture. It was not even plow cultivation. It was just horticulture, HOERTI, horticulture. So slaves were there who worked in the field. The moment this came, the feudalism came, and class, for the first time in human progress, two classes were formed. One was the feudals, other were the slaves. So the slavery started. Classes were started to get formed, and here from the relation of production. What is relation of production? One who knew the technology, other who owned the technology. You take the example of the modern factory. Top class engineers from MIT and BIT and IIT and everywhere. Their degree will not feed them. They will not give them subsistence. They have to work somewhere, either in the public enterprise or in the private enterprise. And then they earn money, and that's how they take out their living. So they know the technology. They don't own the technology. Here Marx says that one who knows the technology, one who owns the technology. Those who own the technology are the owners. Be it a state. State may be owner also of any enterprise, or any capitalist, anybody, any private person, any person can be also factory owner also. So whosoever is the factory owner is the owner of technology. Haves and have-nots. Here starts. One who are haves, they are the owners, and another who was workers, knowing that they are have-nots. So this class struggle starts between the haves and have. One is thesis, another is antithesis. This struggle starts. Once the struggle starts, they come to compromise at a particular point. That is called synthesis. After some time, that synthesis also automatically develops an antithesis, and then again it starts classes. So this is an ongoing process of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The synthesis, and again thesis, reaching synthesis. This is how from feudalism to capitalism to socialism we have been producing. This will end when the communism will be covered entire world. Everything will belong to state. There would be no honor of technology. Those who know the technology, they themselves will be the owner of technology. And then ultimately a stateless society would become, as it was in the primitive communism, he says. That was also a stateless society, Marx said. But then this is Utopia of Karl Marx. I've written that it is as good a utopia as Gandhi's Ram Rajya. Gandhi also said Ram Rajya. He wanted Ram Rajya. This is not possible in this 21st century or in the coming centuries with this all technological development and a lot of factors which cannot be achieved. That is only Gandhi. Otherwise, I think Karl Marx, communism and the stateless society is also a utopia. All these things I have written in my book very well in this year. I would like to say one more thing about the book. You may ask me, or anybody can ask me, since I've completed all evolution, diffusion, structure, function, functionalism, structure, everything, culture, personality, all schools have already completed, right? One may ask, because beforehand I should tell you, what is the ultimate aim of an anthropologist? Anthropology claims to be science. And what does the science do? A scientist in the natural science, they try to discover the laws of nature. Likewise, anthropologists also tries to cover, or social scientist, any social scientist, they try to discover the laws, whether it is governed by law, society. I said, no, cannot be any law as such, for various reasons I've said. Although if you read Radcliffe Brown, he will say that we have to compare the social structures, and out of that comparison, some regularities will be observed that are to be found in all social structures. Those will lead us to social laws. This is what he says. Likewise, so many have said, still to this day, after all these schools and all, after all this theory, no such universal law in social science and in anthropology has been so far discovered. It doesn't mean that we should, I have earlier also said, it doesn't mean that we should avoid scientific method. No, we have always to be like that. We have always to be. We have to follow the scientific method of observation, hypothesis, data collection or experiment, analysis, and then come up with a conclusion. Because that conclusion, I tell you, at least give rise to a hypothesis. And in course of time, the hypothesis, if proved by several scholars, then it will become a concept. And again, after some time, it may become a theory also. So we have to try. But of all the theories, I have not completed, I have not started the last theory, that is human materialism. That theory was propounded or has been propounded by, incidentally, my friend, and who is also the member of my journal, Paul J. Magnarella. And this human materialism, I haven't found in any of the syllabus in any of the universities. They should include. When I was in Allahabad University, I included. And besides that, one of the researchers who is now in London, Marni Srivastava, she did her PhD on human materialism. Okay. Why I say human materialism? Because that is First of all, the latest one, the latest strategy or research strategy, you can say, or theory, you can say. Better I say research strategy in anthropology. Why I say human materialism? Because human materialism, being the latest one, has incorporated everything from the past. He has incorporated Karl Marx, he has incorporated Marvin Harris, and he has included everything of the past. But if you examine, it is only the culture, personality, school of thought which developed under Frank Boas by Margaret Mead, Ruth Benedict, Ralph Linton, Abraham Gardner, and Cora Du Bois. They were the exponents. They were the soldiers, in fact, of Frank Boas. They, of course, said that not only an individual is influenced by society and culture, but the personality of an individual also affects the entire society and culture. This was there. And they came up with several examples. Take the example of Jesus Christ. Take the example of Prophet Muhammad. Take the example of Buddha. Or in the latest period, if you come in the 20th century, take the example of Marx in the 20th century, Marx, Lenin, Mao Zedong, even Mahatma Gandhi. They were such personalities who swept the nation, swept the mankind, and large section of people started. For Buddha was 2,500 years, even before Jesus Christ or Prophet Muhammad. Still now you find the Buddhists are there in different countries. And there was a time when it was spread. If you just see the, before Second World War, if you see the census reports of the world population, I think the Buddhist might be the highest one, thereafter Christianity, thereafter Islam. But after this Red China in 1949, they did not, they discouraged Buddhism. And China, if you minus, even then they considered Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, North Korea, South Korea, Japan, Thailand, Sri Lanka, all these places are still. India, there is no Buddhism. Nowadays, they have started something, But then Buddhism had already obliterated from India 2,000 years before. Anyway, so these personalities were there. So it was in culture personality school. But then Paul McGarrella in Human Materialism once again talks about the human factor, not at this world level or global level or macro level. He talks about even in small societies, simple societies, you can say tribal society. There are tribal heroes. There are such persons in those societies also who influence that society, and they determine the course of that society, course of the history of that society. I can give you the examples. First, I give you an example from Chota Nagpur or Jharkhand. I don't know whether you have visited Jharkhand or not. You visit once, you'll find everywhere the statues of Birsa Munda. You can read in books also, Birsa Munda statue. And anything government going to do or any political party going to do, they will first go and garland the statue of the Birsa Munda and then start their agitation or movement or anything. So Birsa Munda has become a cult. He was an ordinary human being belonging to the Munda community. Munda is a tribe here. I have gone to his birthplace also. Hardly 60 kilometers from here, my place. And I don't want to go into detail, but then he stood against the British. I'm not analyzing what for he stood and all. And he was ultimately imprisoned and died in jail, Ranchi jail. He died in 1900 exactly. But then his influence among the tribal people so that entire Jharkhand agitation, um, even he was not alive, but it gave inspiration, Likewise, in every society, in Chowra, which I have already told you, a small 2.8 square kilometer, hardly 30,000 people, hardly, even less than that. There also, when I started collecting the folk tales, and I came to know about one Kamitop. He was a great hero, warrior. In Nankori also, Tumkum was a great warrior, and people still remember him that he did such and such things and inspires people. So this is called human factor. Paul Magnera says that after all said and done, every society is composed of human beings, and human beings have certain characteristics like love, sex, and counting from his book, anger, jealousy, rivalry. These things are ubiquitous in every society you find. And this plays a great role in the history of that particular community. You just see, read my book, Bishop John Richardson. More than 200 years, the Nicobaris had come in contact with different missionaries, the Dutch, the French, the Moravian, the Austrian, all these missionaries approached, lived there. They tried to evangelize the people and they failed. It comes Bishop John Richardson. Okay? And it changes the entire everything he changes. He became the architect of the modern Nicobar. It was his personality. So one man was responsible, Bishop John Richardson in the Nicobar Islands. In the central group of Nicobar Islands, Rani Sloane. She was not a Rani. There is no queenhood, but she was called by Rani by his fourth husband. Fourth husband. I've written in the book. But then she exercised a lot of influence and brought a change. So this human factor has not been properly dealt with in any of the earlier theories. Sorry, neither Marx, nor Engels, nor even Marvin Harris. He also doesn't talk about the human factors. It is only you have to go back to the Second World War or 1920s and 30s when some of the exponents of cultural and personality school, they talked about that such personalities are there who change the course of society, and they give the examples which I told you. But Paul Magnarella, his concept, if you apply, even in a small community, you will find such things. So I personally like, or I like Karl Marx, historical materialism, and Marvin Harris also, because I have met Marvin Harris also. He died in 2001, and I met him in 1978 in New Delhi. The World Conference of Anthropology was under Vidyarthi. He was the president of the International Union of Anthropological and Ethnological Sciences. So he had organized, great organizer he was, and Marvin Harris had also come. I just met him and talked to him also. He told me a lot about his books, nature, culture, and people. And then he talked about cultural materialism, this thing. I remember Marvin Harris very well. So I've been always influenced by Marvin Harris, but Paul Magnarella last, he included the human factors, which I appreciate very much. And I have extensively explained in my book that how Magnarella's human factor appealed to me, and how from that lens I have examined the contributions of Bishop John Richardson in Nicobar and Rani Lakshmi and Rani Sloane in Nankau. Please ask me some more. Your sound is not, I'm not,
Thank you, sir. Thank you for extensive explanation how these theories can help society and culture. Uh, how do you see the utility of anthropological theories and insights in understanding human nature, individual and social problems?
Yeah. See, I see anthropology alone can best understand the human nature and human problems also. The psychologists can understand the nature and problem of individual. But anthropologists, they study man, all aspects. And one of the most important aspects, two important aspects of man is or are biological aspect and cultural aspect. Other than this, there is none. Either it has to be biological or it has to be cultural. After the 1980s, particularly, I found that all the books, textbooks in anthropology, they say that there are four branches, main branches of anthropology: biological, social, cultural, archaeological, and linguistics. Well, I don't contradict them. But if you ask anybody who teaches, it will be difficult for them to explain why. Sometimes I've found. That's why I'm not. My experiences are there. I've asked the students, I've asked also some of the teachers, why all of a sudden these four branches? Because earlier you read only two branches. I haven't found any satisfactory reply because I still consider the two main branches. As far as archaeology and linguistic anthropologies are concerned, they are the branches of social cultural anthropology. Simple. Why? In archaeological anthropology, archaeology is the science of excavation. Simply. In archaeological anthropology, we try to know the culture of the past. The culture of the past. And anthropology definition, if you read in so many books, you will find that anthropology studies man since man's appearance on earth. So not only the past culture is the subject matter of anthropology, but the present as well as future probable, what is going to happen. That also one can try to predict. An anthropologist can. So it is a part of cultural anthropology to know the culture of the past. There are only two ways through which we can know the culture of the past. One is archaeology. We excavate, we find so many things, material remains of the past people. On the basis of that, we try to think that what was the culture there, what was the ecology, what was everything there. On the basis of those relics, on the basis of those. There is another method also. And this is very significant because it has misled many people to understand anthropology as merely, I should say, tribology. This is one thing that should be made clear. Anthropology is not only confined to the tribal studies. Its scope is man, whole. And one of the societies is the tribal societies. But I remember I was in a selection committee and some PhD had come appearing. I asked him, what is anthropology? Simply, can you tell me? I was asking him in Hindi. His reply was that anthropology is the study of the tribal societies. I was surprised that what they have studied in their courses what their teachers have taught them. After having said this, I again say, still anthropologists, including me, focus more on the study of the tribal societies, not because of any sympathy, no, or not because of any love, or not because of any hate. No, I still say that anthropologists try to study or try to focus their studies still to the tribal societies. And therefore, mistakenly, anthropology is understood to be the study of the tribal people. No. Why do they focus? This question has to be asked in mind. Why? Again, I put forward two. One is very casual, that no other social sciences studies tribal society, so we study. That is a casual explanation. But in fact, why? Because through the study of the simple society, through the study of the indigenous society, through the study of the so-called tribal societies or savage societies, or anything you can say. Am I audible? Can you? Yeah. Through the study of such simple societies or tribal societies, we try to reconstruct again the culture of the past. If you go to Andaman, and see the Jarvas and the Sentinelis and the Ongis, when you find them naked moving in the jungle with their bows and arrows, automatically it comes to your mind that millions of years before, human society was like that. It's a simple thing that they are at the same stage of level and others have progressed. So a study of the simple society also gives us the glimpses of the so-called primitive societies, primitive culture, how it is. Therefore, they study. Now I come to a little bit, thereafter I'll come to your basic question, human nature, why anthropology? I'll come to that. But then I wanted to make it very clear that even linguistic anthropology is a branch of cultural anthropology, is a branch of cultural anthropology. Is there any society, human society? Is there any human society which has got no language? No. Every human society at any hello, yeah. Yeah. Should I continue? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
I was going to say that every human society at any time and space either exists or has existed, they have a language. Without even a small society like 1920 people, they have a language. So language is a part of culture. We transmit all our learned behavior, which some people say as culture, that culture is the learned behavior. So we transmit through the language all the cultural things that we. So language also, there is no society without language. Okay. There is no society without culture. So language is also part of cultural anthropology. Now, having said this, I come to your main question, that how anthropology can be helpful to understand human nature and solve the problem. You see, you have read anthropology. You must be remembering 4 characteristics of the discipline: the field work, participant observation, Participant observation, cultural relativism. Okay. Last but not the least, very important. They call it holistic study. Some people call it integrated study. Anthropology is the science of integrated or holistic science. All these things are. But have you ever tried to understand what is meant here by holistic? That is important. That is, or integrated study. That is one and the same in anthropology. At least the words are different, the meaning may be different, but in anthropology, the meaning of both are one and the same. You won't find in very many books here. I haven't found in very many books. The integrated study or the holistic study means, first of all, before I explain, let me tell you, a psychologist or an economist, they have a specific problem, economic factor. Any problem is there? Why? They also do the same thing, causal explanation, why? But their study is confined to that factor. Psychologists will confine to that factor. Anthropology, if you are given one problem, one thing to understand, they will relate this thing with the entire gamut of culture. That is called integrative study, or that is called the holistic study. With one example, it will be more clear, perhaps. You read the Argonauts of the Western Pacific of Malinowski. Anybody can say that that deals with the culture of the Provident people. But how he has described? He has taken one simple thing, that is Kula. This change of Saulava and change of Moali, clockwise and anti-clockwise. But Kula is one thing that he's been studying, but Kula is how it is related with kinship, how it is related with economy, how it is related with economic, politics, how it is related with religion, and all aspects of culture, how they are integrated or related with Kula. So that is a holistic study. Likewise, you say human nature. Human nature is not the product of one thing. If an anthropologist studies the human nature, he will see every minute as far as practicable. The ecology, the technology, the economy, the politics, the religion, how the human nature is being affected of a particular group. Supposing I am studying the nature of the Munda tribe, okay? Then whole culture, in fact, have to study, and how this entire, all the aspects of culture has been making impact on the nature of a Munda. So I told you in the first sentence that anthropology alone can best study the nature of a society, that's people living in society, or you can say the nature of a culture or nature of a society. That means the nature of the people that constitute the society. Let me, AC is very fast. For some time, I will stop the AC. Okay. That's why I said that the very important characteristics of the discipline of anthropology, which differentiates any other. Because you see, fieldwork has been adopted by others also. Participant observation has also been adopted by others. Cultural relativism is also, to some extent, adopted by others in the name of objectivity and all. But this integrative, or integrated study, or the holistic, this is not the characteristic of psychology. This is not the characteristic of economics. This is not the characteristic of political science or any other social, not even the sociology. No, it is the characteristics of anthropology. If you are given one problem in your question, the problem of human nature to study anthropology, okay? And that nature has to be examined behind the backdrop of the entire culture of a community, and then only we can answer. We can answer, I have answered in my book, bigger the island, lazier the people, smaller the island, more industrious the people. You read that. Why? It's not that by birth someone is lazier, not by birth someone is more industrious. No, it is the situation in which they live. It is their ecology, technology, economics, every aspect of culture has made the member of a um, uh, just a minute, just a minute. अंबू मैं मीटिंग में हूँ 2 बजे तक. हाँ ठीक. So this is, you know, sorry, by birth, a Chavanian is not industrious. By birth, is not. It is the circumstances. It is the social circumstances. It is the cultural circumstances. It is the economic circumstances, and all combined together circumstances that make a Chavanian more industrious, that make a Chavanian best navigator, and that makes a Terrasan lazy. Yeah.
Because the culture is acquired. When people born, they're born with huge potential, but how they unpack that potential, and depending on their needs or the problems they face, or the struggles they undergo, or the culture they born into, and the society, the societal relations that are amidst of those things. So how people, the acquisition process of acquiring the competencies or capabilities, and whether it is linguistic competencies, or whether it is productive, or whether it is the social, having the effective social relations, and how these competencies and the attitudes are acquired, and how these things are really, because from culture to culture, from community to community, people's acquisition patterns, people have the power to acquire the competencies, but they differ from culture to culture. What are the factors that are responsible for this kind of differences?
The entire total answer you have yourself given in the beginning, right in the beginning, what you said, the first sentence probably. Culture is acquired. Here lies the real answer. Of course, it has to be elaborated. It has to be elaborated. We acquire. Why do we acquire? And how do we acquire? These two, I hope, if we understand these two factors, entire answer is clear before anybody. Why do we acquire? Because man and man alone can acquire culture, and no other animal.
That is really amazing process. That is really what amazes me.
It's not amazing. It's not amazing. If you anthropologically try to understand, it's not amazing. Simply, it's not at all amazing. Because there are millions of I don't know, only a zoologist will say how many types of organisms are there. I've never bothered to say. But I see the amoeba, unicellular, to all big whales and elephants and man also. So man is an animal, is an organism. And besides man, there are, I don't know how many thousands or millions of uh, organisms are there. None of them has the ability to acquire culture. It is only man. Is it because of God? No. Is it that the God was pleased with man and said, okay, you acquire culture and rest will not? No, this is all farce. In different types of, in every religion, in every society, some sort of creation, a theory of creation, what we call. No, it is not like that. It is simply biological and nothing else. Culture is because of the biological aspect of man. There are crucial physical characteristics in man. There are crucial physical characteristics in man which has developed during the, all these process of evolution. Darwin, let us come to Darwin. So all these crucial physical characteristics developed in man in the course of evolution, and they are the reasons for our culture. It is not the God gift. It is not bestowed by anybody. No. And these crucial physical characteristics, I tell you, they are only 4. If man is not equipped with these 4 crucial characteristics, then it will be like an ape and it will be subhuman, not human. Only when these crucial characteristics are there, then only he will be called Homo sapiens. You must have read in anthropology books. Homo sapiens, a modern man. What are they? The first and the foremost, the opposable thumb. Because of the opposable thumb, we can manipulate our hands like the way we try and like the way we can. From the days of the Paleolithic period, when man made stone tools and bone tools, he used his opposable thumb. And today, when we go to the Mars and in rocket and in all these things, so this opposable thumb has been one of the, not the only, one of the crucial physical characteristics that has been responsible for man's ability to acquire culture. Well, you see, there are some other animals also like anthropoid ape and monkeys. They have also opposable thumb. They live a terrestrial life and hold the branches of the tree. So it is one of the correct, not the only. Second important, our erect posture. We can stand. See the nearest relatives of man or primates. They can stand, a monkey or an ape can stand and walk a few steps, and then again they have to take the help of their hands to walk further. Why? Because in the there is linea aspera in the femur bone. Supposing this is a femur bone, in the posterior back aspect of it, there is a ridge. And the muscles of our thigh are so attached with the ridge that we stand erect. In monkeys, in anthropoid apes, that ridge is absent. Therefore, they cannot straight erect posture, no. So linea aspera in femur bone is the second important crucial physical characteristic responsible for the creation of culture. And the third, again, very important, articulation of language. You know the South Indian language. I don't know. Yet we are interacting in English language, through the language. We are interacting. So this articulation of language is very important, because all the other organisms or animals, they can make sound, glottal sound from their, yeah, they can shout, they can, but language, in different language, they cannot. It is only the man. And what is the physical condition for that? This mandible, lower jaw. Here, inside, posterior aspect of the pointed, you just hold a mandible and put it here. You will find a very pointed bone. Our lips are attached with that bone. And any language we speak, our lips, teeth, main is tongue. Then comes the importance of teeth, and then comes the importance of lips. These things are important, but the most important being the tongue. Tongue is attached. Therefore, we can articulate in any language. And last, the development of cerebral cortex, that is cranium, where our brain is preserved. And I can't say anything about the brain. People are surprised to see computers and supercomputers, but these computers and supercomputers are also the product of the brain, of human brain. So what is that? It is very impossible to describe, because brain gives us the not only the power of retention, but it gives the power of symbolizing. We symbolize anything, you know. This A, B, C, D, English, or Ka, Kha, Ga, Hindi, or in every language, there are alphabets. They are nothing but symbols, nothing but symbols. So this ability to symbolize, you see, you can read, I'll suggest you to read Leslie White, how much he has talked about all these things. Man and man alone is able to symbolize. If you write this way, it is A, not B. This way. Why? This is nothing but a symbol. So this brain gives us the idea, power of retention. And besides that, because of this, we symbolize anything and we transmit our learned behavior mostly through symbolism. Language is English language, I'm speaking to you, interacting with you. Language is the symbolism. It's a symbol. So these are the crucial physical characteristics of man. Because man is equipped with such crucial physical characteristics, therefore, again I come to your old sentence which you uttered, man and man alone can acquire culture, no other. None. There are lots of definitions of culture. There is a book I told you, written by L. Kroeber and Clyde Cluckhorn. The very title of the book is On the Definition and Concept of Culture. In that 160 definitions, or 66 probably, I have the book with me. The photocopy of the book I have. 160 or 66 definitions given by anthropologists, sociologists, historians, literators, and from various fields, how they have defined culture that has been given there and analyzed also. And ultimately the conclusion is there is no unanimous definition of culture. There is no unanimous definition of culture. Of all the definitions, of course, Tyler's culture is that complex whole which includes such and such things, law, art, moral, etc., and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. That is definitely considered to be very nearly scientific. Nearly scientific again answer. Because he says that culture, first of all, is acquired, not inherited. This is the first point in Tyler's definition. Otherwise, before Tyler, people thought that culture is acquired, inherited. The white men inherit superior culture. The non-whites or blacks, they inherit inferior cultures. This was the notion before Tyler. And even after Tyler also, this notion was there. I don't know whether I'm getting recorded or not, but hello. Yeah. I can't hear you.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Some internet problem, it seems.
It is
You are talking about these Tyler's definition and how
that's
scientific it is.
that's the only definition. Of course, there are Malinowski has also very beautifully described and others also. But out of that, Tyler's is supposed to be the character because he says in his definition that culture is that complex whole which includes 6 or 7 things, he says, and then acquired by man. Otherwise, before Tyler, it was considered it is inherited. The white men inherit better culture or superior. The non-whites or the blacks, they inherit. This was the notion in anthropology also among the scholars. So he was the first to say acquire. That's important. And acquire also, a man cannot alone acquire. Today, science has developed too much. Baby, test tube baby and all these things are the concept, So a test tube baby can be born and then kept alive for years together by feeding and by giving oxygen, everything. If you keep such a baby aloof from human society, from family, would he or she learn anything about culture? No. So second, last part of definition also, Tyler, is very important. How do we acquire culture? Not living in isolation, but as a member of the society. As a member of the society. So these two things are very important in Tyler's definition, culture. I'm forgetting your initial question about culture, was there? Something? Yes. Once again, would you repeat your earlier question in the beginning? Oh, I can't hear.
People born with huge potential,
yes.
but
Right.
they unpack the acquisition is determined by what are the factors that determine the acquisition process of the required competencies to not only for survival but also for flourishment. And how do
I just a little before I gave you two examples, one of the island of Chaura, another of the island of Teresa. These two examples are sufficient to explain that how different types of cultures, why this similarity and why this difference. This similarity and difference is very important. Marvin Harris has emphasized, and he says that all the theories in anthropology are but the products of the causal explanation of similarities and differences in cultures. This is a sentence which I have written today, perhaps, or day before today, that according to Marvin Harris, all the anthropological theories are but the products of the causal explanation, cause effect. Why so? Why so? The causal explanation, CAUSAL. Some people confuse casual and causal. No, causal explanation is important, scientific. So what is the causal explanation of similarities and differences between cultures? So there's so many schools, evolution, diffusion, all they have attempted. Marvin Harris says that it is the strategy of cultural materialism through which, if you examine a society, you find the solution that why there is cultural similarity and why there is difference. So it is very much that once you start examining any aspect of culture or nature, nature of the society, you have to be holistic. You have to examine it in an integrated way. Not that you are examining one economic problem, you confine it only to the economic problem. No. That economic problem, if you start probing, you will find that it is a concern with kinship, it is concerned with marriage. All aspects are somehow or other, they must be concerned with. That way, if you examine, then ultimately you come to, according to Marx, historical materialism. According to Harris, if you study from the viewpoint of cultural materialism, you will find the answer that why it is so and so. And of course, Paul Magnarella I have discussed earlier, that includes the human factor also. So this is the importance of theory in understanding. The evolutionists also have explained the cause of the origin and similarities and differences. This is psychic unity of mankind. This is the word of the evolutionist 19th century. That why this similarity and differences, why there is family among the Kwakital, why there is family among the Papua New Guinean, why there is family in Euro-American society also, and why there are differences in them. The evolutionists of the 19th century said the cause of this difference, they explain it through the psychic unity of mankind. What is the psychic unity? Man responds in the same manner, in the same circumstance. So a situation came in this place, the same situation, if emerged at hundreds and thousands of miles away also, the same response will be there. So the family is also, because of everything is psychic unity of mankind. You please sometimes see, you'll wonderful, it's something. Well, after that, school of diffusionism was denied. It was replaced by diffusion. Diffusionists said no. They were anti-evolution. They didn't believe in psychic unity of mankind. They said culture emerges once and once only. After evolution, the diffusion came. Diffusionists say culture emerges once and once only, and then it spreads. Then it spreads through diffusion and migration. So you see that because the reason for the similarities and differences by evolutionists was psychic unity of mankind. After it was rejected, the failure of one school is the cause of the emergence of another. This is very simple. Diffusion came. What the diffusionists said, no psychic unity of mankind. It doesn't happen so. They said culture emerges once and once only in a favorable circumstances. And then it spreads through diffusion and through migration. But not more than once, they say. Generally, the diffusionists say, in a favorable circumstances. Okay. Then also in diffusion also there were three schools, American diffusionism, German diffusionism, British diffusionism. The most orthodox were the British diffusionists. What they said? Elliot Smith and Perry, they went to visit Egypt. They were moved to see the pyramid. They were astonished, impressed. And what they thought? that Egypt and Egypt alone is the cradle of civilization. All the civilizations they have adopted from Egypt only. Wherever the Egyptians went, and whosoever directly or indirectly came in contact with them, they learned and they started explaining. That was also rejected. Then comes the school to increase the school, German school. They were very laborious. Germans were very laborious. And they laboriously studied in library, compared different cultural items of the world over. Then they came up with their Kulturkreis, that is culture circle school. They talked about the layers of culture. I don't want to go into detail. Finally came the American anthropologists. But then diffusion also had nothing. When came Malinowski and Rutger Brown, they said, no diffusion, no evolution. An anthropologist to study the structure and then find the similarities and differences in the social structure. Likewise, it goes on. Then comes culture, personality, etc. So, what I would like to say that it is very simple to know the cause, what you are asking for the nature, why it is different in Chaura, the nature of the people of Chaura. There are only 14 nautical miles. The difference is only 14 nautical miles. But see the density of population. In Chaura, there was around 3,000 people. In Teresa, 351 people. The size of the island, 2.8 square kilometer. Small island, Chaura. Size of the Teresa, 27 square kilometer. In Chaura, the food stuff is not sufficient to sustain the entire population. In Teresa, there is surplus food. Coconut tree is supposed to be the property there. Millions of coconut trees. Nobody knows his exact number of coconut trees. A girl, as soon as she attains the age of puberty, she is allotted an area of coconut tree that is hers. In Chaura, this cannot be possible. Even the coconut trees are limited, which are supposed to be the property. They eat, in those days, they ate yams, tapioca, banana, papaya, etc. in their horticulture. They didn't have the land also to make horticulture. They used to go to Teresa and nearby other islands. Nearest was Teresa, bigger one. They requested the Teresan to give them a portion of land. Land was given to them. They made the garden and shared the things, produce. Now, Teresans don't have to do any labor in their garden. They know that children will come and do the thing. So they automatically become easier. What else to do? Eat, drink, and be merry. Eat, drink, and be merry. That is what find in Teresa. Whereas in Chaura, every time people are struggling for their food going up. It's very easy to understand why the nature of Chaurians is so and why the nature of Teresan is so. So an anthropologist, if you're given such a problem to study, he should not see any isolated or problem, but that problem, how, and if he goes on analyzing, he will have the reply of the reasons. What are the reasons for the difference in the very nature of the culture of one society to another?
Sir, it is quite interesting. People born with potential, but from individual to individual, even though they're born into the same family, the smartness and the goodness differs from person to person. And it surprises me because they are raised by the same parents, the same culture. but they acquire the acquisition pattern of their attitudes. Some person's attitude, some individuals of the same family acquire the positive attitudes. Some individuals acquire the neutral attitudes. Some persons acquire the negative attitudes. And how do these differences? And because the attitude matters a lot. Attitude brings the life and builds the life or breaks the life. And but even though they are born into the same family, born with a huge potential and acquisition of different sorts of attitudes, and how does it really, how anthropology and the accounts for it, kind of
Yeah. See,
how anthropology explains this.
right. I'll have a little bit of reservation also. First of all, anthropology studies society and culture. It is the psychologist who studies individual. Anthropologist studies society and culture. Individual is studied by psychologists. This is true. So this question should better be asked to a psychologist, that why this so and so. You study, you have a lot of techniques, Rorschach test, Gestalt test, TAT, thematic perception test, dolls and drawing test, and all tests you apply. And then you say, in anthropology also, such studies have been done. Little bit of such studies have been done by Margaret Mead. She tells that why someone's are free from the stress and strain because of the process of socialization, because of the socialization in the early childhood, late childhood, because of the toilet training. All these things are there. She further compares it with the quackoodle in one of her books, that why quackoodles are so aggressive, quarrelsome, and why some other societies are so cooperative. Her book is there, edited book is there, Cooperation and Competition in Three Primitive Society. This is one of her books, So to some extent, in anthropology also, we can reply very well with the study of our method. Then comes your Ralph Linton, Abraham Gardner. They come up with basic personality structure. They talk about that how the basic personality structure is formed of an individual. I don't go into the detail of their theory. And finally comes Cora Du Bois, whose methodology was very much in demand sometime in the 1940s and 50s. Modal personality, MODAL, not EL, that's modal, MODAL. Mode, trend, the bent of the personality of the whole group and the whole society. And for that, her methodology was to collect biography, to collect dreams. Besides, of course, all the ethnographic works, collection of all ethnographic details, dreams. Then she applied biographies and then Rorschach test. And she gave it to the, if you have read, she gave it to the experts to analyze, keeping them blind of the Alor, people of Alor. Her name, the Alor is a people, a group, community in Indonesia. She worked in Indonesia, and she collected the people, dreams of Alori's people. She collected the biographies of the Alori's people. She applied psychological techniques such as Rorschach and thematic perception test, etc. And then she gave it to the experts to analyze without telling them that where from she had got it. And the response of all these dream analysts and biography analyst and the psychological Rorschach test and techniques, they indicated the same mode. So that she gave model personality. But all these experiments have been done on society, not on individual. I told you in the beginning that in a family, I see in my family, we are four brothers, all of different nature, all of different nature. So this, to my mind, as an anthropologist, I can only say that we have to make an intensive study of each and every individual, just as a psychologist does. So intensively you have to interview the person. So intensively you have to work with them and observe them. Without that, it is, I think, won't be pertinent to say that a simple call. That why? Because individuals vary, their nature vary. Yes, just like the fingerprint varies, you know. So it is a matter of investigation. See, one book is there by Oscar Lewis. Beautiful book. La Vida. L-A, then V-I-D-A, La Vida. You can put it in the internet and you can know it. There are 6 members in a family, and he lived with the family, lived with a person, and a voluminous book of no less than 400 pages, 350 or 400 pages, La Vida. That is only about those 6 persons. There are 6 chapters. So I don't suppose that there is one universal factor which we can attribute to the differences of individual nature. Nature of that there is not any ready-made one such a factor which is responsible for it. It needs a prolonged study of a family. You have to live
Sir, I'm
there.
not able to.
Am I audible now? Yes. Am I audible? Yes, Dr. Pedarattaiah.
Sir,
Now,
sorry for the inconvenience.
yeah, yeah,
We got connected.
yeah, we got.
Sir, you are telling about the La Vida book, Oscar Lewis, and how he lived
Oscar.
with the 6 people.
Yes. Okay. See, can you hear me now properly?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, La Vida, 6 members of the family and 6 chapters are there. And the author, Oscar Lewis, he spent his time with those people, and very minutely he has studied. It is a book to be read by everybody interested in how, because generally people think that anthropologists go to study in a village or in a community, stay there. No, there's a absolutely different type of books, and in that he has been able to analyze the nature of the persons in a family. That has to be read. Number one. Number two, I would again say, remind you of another book also. An anthropologist among the historians. It's a very interesting book. An anthropologist among the historians. It's been written by Bernard S. Cohen. Bernard S. Cohen. He's an American anthropologist. And generally we study, in anthropology, we study a community. We focus our attention to the study of the indigenous or the tribal community. We do focus. And I have told you the reasons why do we focus. He wanted to study the historians as a community. A wonderful study, wonderful study. And what it does is very interesting. He selected the historians of 3 universities of the world. One was Columbia University in New York. I've been to that university also. Just visited, saw the things. Another was Oxford University. And third is very surprising, Allahabad University, India. Because the Department of History, Allahabad University, has produced some very, very significant historians of the country. R.S. Sharma, particularly, a great historian, and a number of A.L. Shrivastava, Ashirwadi Lal Shrivastava. Then, so this way he selected. And even now, V.D. Mishra is from Allahabad University. They are great historians, in a way, they are. So he selected Allahabad University. What he did, you read the book, his mythology. He lived in the family of the historians. He watched the behavior of the historian with his wife, with his children, with his friends. Everything minutely he has observed in the family. How is the family life? He watched a historian walking in the library or working in the archives. He attended the classes of the historians. He saw when 2 historians or 3 or 4, a group of historians meet, what is the common topic for their work and all. All these things he observed. And observation, I have told you, is an examination of the phenomena. So just as if the historians are a tribe or a community, and he observed, and then he has come up with that book. a historian among an anthropologist among the historians. I'll tell you only something about the introduction which he has written. Very interesting. He differentiates between an anthropologist and a historian. What he says, just see the nature of the historian. Find the clue there. A historian is introvert by nature, whereas an anthropologist is extrovert. The reason is interesting. A historian walks in the archives, in the libraries, and finds out a documentary proof of anything of the past. He doesn't want to reveal it to anybody. Until and unless he publishes those things in his name, that he has discovered this thing. Okay? If he discloses it to others, others may take a lead and they may publish before him. So fear of this, and a historian never reveals his finding before publication. By doing so, he has become introvert. He doesn't share his findings with others. He doesn't share. Whereas an anthropologist, he shares it widely. Why? He is not afraid of the pilferage of his data. He is not afraid. Why? He is not afraid. Because until and unless he goes to the field, I've told you earlier that in Oxford and Cambridge, after post-graduation, unless an anthropologist stayed at least for a year, he was not to be considered a member of the Guild of Anthropology. This is what the RFLN writes. So I have lived in 13 months in the Nicobar archipelago. Although I don't claim to be authentic, I have already told you earlier. I don't claim, anthropologists mustn't claim, because the culture is fast changing. Okay. But even then, if anybody wants to contradict my statement about the Nicobar Islands, he has to live there for 14 months, at least 1 month more than me. And then if it comes up, and then if he writes, others will say, yes, he has done more fieldwork than Dr. Sahay. So his version is correct or more correct than the earlier version. So I've shared my data with everybody freely, with no problem. You go to Nicobar, live the life that I have lived, and then if you claim, I'll also acknowledge then. But if anybody writes simply contradictions, at least the anthropology world will say, no, this fieldwork in anthropology is such that gives you a sort of immunity against all such things, you know. So by nature, anthropologists become extrovert because he's not afraid at all of sharing his data. Whereas, so he becomes extrovert and a historian becomes introvert. Besides many things, yes, I just remembered, you know, so I told you. And lastly, he writes in the introduction, thanks God, I am an anthropologist. That is what Bernardus Coins writes. So the question which you asked me about the individual differences in a family, among the brothers, among the sisters, it is not a matter, one single factor we cannot attribute to it until and unless we so deeply study. Given the opportunity, I would like to say, I would like to study. I'm going to take this arranging study to study and discover how
Hello, sir. I'm not able to hear you. Hello, Professor Sahay, sir. I'm not able to hear you. Hello, sir.